Hello, I'm Douglas Newell, conductor of the Enid Symphony Orchestra, and for this segment of Community Talk today, I have one of my very favorite young musicians that plays in our orchestra, Chazlen Rook. Chazlen, welcome.
Thank you, Doug. Great to be here.
Thank you. I have to tell you, everybody thinks that, in the symphony orchestra that our musicians play classical music and that's the limit of what they do. Not at all. For example, my wife and I love to play and sing the songs of Gershwin, and Cole Porter, things like that. Chazlen, though, has one of the most diverse set of musical skills and interests of any musician I know. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Chazlen.
Yeah, so I play violin in the symphony, and that's my main instrument. And it's really, violin to me is just a medium for so many different pathways. I was classically trained, I went through public school and orchestra, and then I decided to continue music in college, which really broadened my horizons in so many ways. It introduced me to history. I really developed a love for history, which introduced me to unconventional instruments and historical performance. And from there, I kind of went in a lot of different directions. I got into contemporary classical music. I got into folk music. I got to study abroad in Norway. And that was actually a concert that I gave with this series 2 years ago with my folk band, Rowland. And so now I'm coming back with one of my more recent endeavors, which is jazz violin. And so finally diving into American classical music and Black classical music. And it's been such an incredible journey. I'm doing my master's right now in jazz studies with an emphasis in production at UCO. So getting to play in big bands and combos and work on new music and arranging and writing. And it's been such a joy, and I've made so many new friends along the way.
That is so fascinating because, I mean, this is such a diverse skill set that you have. The only other jazz violinist I've heard of was when I was in college was Stefan Grappelli. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know the name.
Yes, yeah. One of the most elegant jazz violinists, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Frenchman. Mm-hmm. Yes, with an Italian last name. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, right.
Grappelli, but nonetheless. Now, if you're watching today, I want to invite you to come to the Enid Symphony, to the Joan Allen Symphony Hall this Tuesday evening when we present Chazlen and the Chazlen Rook Jazz Quintet, I understand.
Yes.
In the Edward Jones Harvest Wine series. This is the second concert in our series this summer, and this whole series is graciously sponsored by the local Edward Jones agents here in Enid. You can come in at 6:30, have a glass of wine. The concert will start at 7 and last about an hour, and it'll all be announced from the stage. But can you tell us a little bit about this particular performance? Who's coming with you? Who are the other four members that are coming with you, and what are you going to play?
Yeah, so first, the other members I'm really excited about. They're some of the best jazz musicians in Oklahoma and from all different parts of Oklahoma. So on drums, we'll have someone that I've been playing with regularly for the past year through school. We're both graduate students. His name is Kyle Broadbooks, an excellent, dynamic, super fun, hilarious drummer and person. Really excited to be with him. On guitar, we'll have Mitch Bell, many people's favorite guitarist in the area, one of many great musicians here. He's in Oklahoma City. And then we'll also have Mike Cameron coming down from Tulsa, and he'll be on saxophone. And then we have a very special member, my family member, Victor Rook. He is from Norman, and this will actually be our first concert together because we didn't know that we were related until about 2 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
And we kept going to the same jazz jams, and we have the same last name, Rook, and I've been asked before, are you related to Victor Rook? And I said no, and he said no. But then we got to talking about our history and our ancestry and our roots in Oklahoma, And we were actually at the Speakeasy, a wonderful venue for jazz here in Oklahoma City. And at about 1 in the morning, 2 years ago, we found out that we are in fact related. So, one of the only other practicing musicians in my family, an excellent bassist, in all different kinds of genres, jazz, funk. He's in a cover band every Thursday at the Deli in Norman, Biscuits and Groovy. So go check that out if you're ever in the Norman area on a Thursday night. Very charismatic ensemble. But I'm so grateful to be performing with him. It's really, really special.
Well, it's going to be a special evening for us here at the Symphony Hall. You talk about early music and then the Norwegian music that you brought to us. It's so fascinating to me. You don't know this, but when I began studying violin in the 5th grade in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the public schools, it was only the 2nd year that I studied that the Suzuki teaching method was introduced into the public schools in Charlotte. And so from there on, we used that method. Fortunately, the 4 people in my elementary class had all studied piano before we started in 3rd grade together, before we went to violin in the 5th grade. Do you have any other non-string instruments that you play?
Yes. This one's a little bit of a cheap kind of instrument in terms of playing, but one of my favorites is my organette, which is kind of like a player piano. So it only needs to be cranked. That's how the sound is made. There's 2 bellows in the middle, and it operates off of a roll. So it's kind of like a harmonica. And when the player piano roll goes through, all of the holes are little circuits for wind to go through, and it plays notes. So I've actually commissioned new works by Oklahoma composers on that instrument, because I just need to send a MIDI file to the people that punch out the holes. So that's really fun. Most of my instruments, I'd say, are string instruments, though, all kinds. I've done some piano and experimental music. I've played wind chimes and even made chili as part of an experimental sound performance. So if you count that as another instrument, sure. But definitely my world revolves around strings, and it's such a dynamic world to live in.
Okay, well, this is all begging the question from me. Do you have any backup charts for orchestra for any of the things that you play?
Backup charts for orchestra?
Yes. I think you should if you don't.
Yes, you're very right. I would love to do nickel harpa with orchestra. I've heard of some orchestral works that feature the nickel harpa, and that would probably be first on my list, too.
But you could probably write those yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's such a grand repertoire for nickel harpa in terms of folk music, but then also early music. And so, pretty dynamic instrument.
I don't think you have any limitations.
That's my goal. Is to just
I think that is so tremendous. I think that is so tremendous. And I'm going to reference again one time when I was coming along, really performance practice, historically informed performance, wasn't taught when I was in undergraduate school. By the time I was in graduate school, it was emerging as a subject and became more common in American music schools. So it's very fascinating. But from there, I mean, then we have things like the Berklee School of Jazz, which was right around the corner from where I went to grad school at New England Conservatory. And we have such phenomenal programs in jazz, in commercial music. Where do you see your career going?
Big question. Big question. I really identify with the life of an artist scholar. So I feel like I'm really driven not only by musicians and composers, but also by history and research and uncovering new stories. So I think my life will mainly be traveling, researching, meeting new people, which then makes me want to create a concert out of those experiences. And I think that will just be kind of a cycle that goes in many different places and genres. But I think that will kind of be the pattern, is just storytelling and being able to say what I want to say.
Okay, well, let's go back to the immediate future, which is this coming Tuesday at Joan Allen Symphony Hall at 301 West Broadway in Enid. Tickets are available at the door, by the way. They're $15. They include complimentary wine and the 1 hour performance by Chazlen and the Jazz Quintet. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to play? Going to be standards or fusion or what?
Well, it's going to be all of the above a little bit. It's going to be rooted in Oklahoma jazz. So it's somewhat of an Oklahoma jazz odyssey through the ages. So we'll start with one of the first big bands in Oklahoma, a territory band called the Oklahoma City Blue Devils. And they recorded in the late 20s, so we'll be playing one of their works. And they were renowned in the region, and a lot of those members ended up going into the Benny Moten Orchestra, which then led into the Count Basie Orchestra, which may be a familiar name to listeners.
Sure.
And it was just a really interesting group of people, professional musicians, self-taught musicians, and it was almost an institution in itself. They would help each other compose and write and play. So a very unique kind of genesis to Oklahoma jazz. And then we'll go through Jay McShann. You'll hear Claude Williams, a fiddler from Muskogee, so another jazz violinist, who was actually in a string band with his brother, and then he saw Joe Venuti do a concert in Muskogee, and he said, I want to play the violin. So he was actually the first guitarist to record with Count Basie, but then he had a very long life as a jazz violinist, very unique life. And we'll also have Chet Baker. We'll also have Don Cherry, kind of getting more into free and jazz fusion, kind of folk jazz, free jazz. We'll also have a work by our guitarist, Mitch Bell, that was recently recorded by our saxophonist, Mike Cameron. It's called Equality. So Mike Cameron just released an incredible album of music, and Equality's featured on that album. So I figured if we're telling the story of Oklahoma jazz, we should tell the story of Oklahoma jazz today as well. So some familiar musicians, some unfamiliar musicians, but such an incredible breadth of work that's been produced on this land. So I'm really excited to share the story.
Well, we're excited to have you as our guest at Symphony Hall this week. If you're listening to this broadcast, let me tell you, Chazlen is one of the most intriguing musicians, but she has, when she performs, don't mean to embarrass you, but when she performs, there's a soul that comes alive and escapes into the room, and it draws you into the music. This time it's going to be jazz. It was something different before. It was Norwegian. But this is a person from Oklahoma who has, I think, one of the brightest futures in music, and to have an impact on music in Oklahoma for many years to come. Chazlen, we're so excited to have you come to Symphony Hall Tuesday night. Can't wait to see you and to have the audience meet you and the quintet and listen to some wonderful music. I'm Douglas Newell again for the Enid Symphony Orchestra. If you've never been to our hall, this is a perfect time to come and enjoy music that some will sound familiar, some will sound historic as far as jazz, and some will sound brand new. But that's what music is all about as a universal language. Thank you again for being with us today, Chazlen. Look forward to seeing you Tuesday night, and we look forward to seeing you in our audience.
Thank you, Doug.